Free stuff, government subsidies. Let's get to it. We're talking free stuff. Well, there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's a cost to everything, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Sure, free stuff is nice, subsidies are nice, but there's no free thing. Someone ultimately has to pay the cost. A subsidy is a benefit for an individual, business, or institution. The government gives a benefit to an individual, a business, or an institution. And ultimately, what the government is trying to do is encourage something to happen. Grow a business, start a new type of business, start a new type of business in a specific area to help a specific individual or group of individuals that are in need, or specific institutions that could benefit society. How does it happen? Cash payments, tax breaks. The ultimate goal, supporting a part of the economy, whether it's a new part of the economy, a part of the economy that is struggling or struggling to compete with other nations, or a part of the economy in a geographic location. A benefit is given, a subsidy, free stuff, money, cash, tax breaks. It can also more commonly be used to promote a social good, to help those in need, help people who need to get back on their feet, help people that can't help themselves. That graphic pretty much sums it up. We take taxes, goes through the government machine, comes out the other end and goes to someone else. It might seem unfair on the surface to take from one and give to another, but we all agree that if we all pitch in a little bit, and the government wisely, effectively, and efficiently takes that pitch in and then not necessarily doles it out, but redirects that money to places that are going to benefit the greater good, then it's probably not that bad of a deal. Now, that's not really what happens, but in theory, if it were possible that the government could take a little bit from everybody and then wisely, effectively, and efficiently take that large sum of money and put it into places that are going to benefit the greater good, help those in need, grow the economy, then no one would really have a problem. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work out that way, but that's what we have. Is it a handout? Yes. Is it robbery through taxes? Sure, why not? But as we'll see later in the lesson, there's just no other way of really providing a lot of the services that the government really needs to provide. It's the only way to do it. Today we're going to focus mainly on the cost, the money perspective of the subsidies or the free stuff. Later on in future lessons, we will look at the behaviors. How do subsidies change the behaviors of Americans, and how could that be very counterproductive generation after generation? We'll also look at how people behave differently when they get free stuff and how that can have consequences and ramifications. But today we're just going to look at pure and simple, what is a subsidy? What is the free stuff? Who bears the cost? So it's a handout, yes. Taxes go through the government machine, goes to someone else. We'll look mainly at Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, EPD cards to start out. So the government sends money to people in need in the form of the electronic benefits card. We'll just think of it as cash. And they use that cash to purchase food so they don't starve. Pretty simple. And this also is an indirect subsidy or free stuff for farmers, because ultimately what's happening is the people in need who receive the funding from the government through this dole out, they get the cash, they spend the cash on food. The food came from the farmer. So we have a lot of people benefiting. Who's not benefiting? Well, the person not benefiting is going to be the taxpayer. Taxpayer does not get an electronic benefits card. They do not get money for food. In fact, they're also paying for that card. So you pay and you don't get to play. That's how subsidies work. But at least the taxpayer knows that their tax dollars went to help those in need. Now, as students pointed out the other day when they were watching some shopping taking place with EBT cards, Someone purchased sodas and cookies and candies. And yes, this will be a cause for concern, and this will be an issue of debate later on in lessons, that no one minds paying taxes if the government wisely, effectively, and efficiently spends the money. We've talked about taxing. We've talked about borrowing. The big deal is spending, government spending. And most of the arguments in this class and in real life, and most of our political divide in this country comes down to government spending. And that student pointed out a perfect example of government spending. While it wasn't necessarily government spending, it was the individual household spending, but that spending took place because of government spending. Does the government put the money in the right hands? Is money used correctly? No one would have a problem paying taxes ever if they knew that their money was being spent wisely. That is a big problem. Or being spent on the causes that they prefer. And then, even if the government were able to spend in the most accurate, perfect manner, when they spend, they often are putting money in the hands of individual households and firms, and then you need them to spend wisely, effectively, efficiently to please the American citizen. So let's imagine that the government gave the money to the right place, to a family in need, and then that individual family made poor health choices with that money. That will continue to infuriate the American taxpayer and continue to create divides. And the American taxpayer would then be for some programs and against others. And by being for and against different programs, they're probably going to be divided from other American taxpayers who are for some programs and against others. They want to fund this, but they don't want to fund that. And so that is the argument. That is the divide. That's probably the biggest cause of conflict in our nation, is boiling it all down to one thing. What should the government spend on? What should they not spend on? It's a big issue. And that's why we're talking about it here. Oh, by the way, you are spending on it too. So you are entirely allowed to be infuriated by government spending. You can be upset that they're spending on this and not spending on that. Well, you probably are thinking, I'm not paying for this. You are paying for this. You're paying for this program. How are you paying for this program? Well, every year the government collects tax revenue, but they don't collect enough to pay for all of the subsidies that they've promised. They do not collect enough tax dollars to pay for the programs that they try to provide year after year. So they issue bonds. They go to banks to borrow money every year, every day, every second. And that's how they make up the difference. Years pass, and then they got to pay back those loans, pay back those bonds. That's where you come in. You're going to pay for that. Again, you probably wouldn't mind if you knew that this money the government is taking from you right now is going to all the right places, and all those right places are spending it correctly. But it's probably not working that way. And so it goes. There's no such thing as a free lunch. There's nothing free. Now, yeah, it was great. This person was able to get the electronic benefits card, free meals. But someone had to pay the cost. Taxpayers, the future. Nothing is free. Everything has a cost. There are trade-offs. There are no solutions. If you want to help those in need, you got to pay for it with higher taxes. You got to pay for it with high borrowing and charging future generations. Literally, school lunch. If you want to give free lunches to kids, it's going to mean higher taxes for everyone else. Let's have a thought experiment. In Society 1, theoretically, everything is free. All free, all the time, awesome. In Society 2, or world number 2, nothing is free. You want something, you got to pay for it. Well, if we look at Society 1 again, where everything is free, if you don't have to pay for anything, there is absolutely no reason to work, and you would not work. We work because we have to pay for things, we have to buy things. And I know someone's out there going to say, no, I want to work because I have dignity and I want to believe in myself. And that's good and it's great, that's awesome. But in reality, if we didn't have to work, we wouldn't work. So from a macro perspective, if we look at the society over here as a whole, probably not a good thing. If no one has to work, then we'll all become lazy slobs. This may not be a good place to live. Now, from the micro, the individual perspective, this would be kind of nice. I don't want to work all day, every day. Just relax, take it easy. Sounds pretty fun to me. If I had to choose between all free and no free right now at this moment, I'm checking the all free. Now, no free, you gotta work. Whistle while you work, gotta keep working. You gotta work hard every day to make money, to buy goods, to buy what you need. And everyone is competing against each other constantly. Dog eat dog, free market. Which do you want to live in? Dog eat dog, free market. Work hard, try to be better than everybody else, get more money than everybody else, keep working, or the left. Now, I think if we're all being honest and not really looking at it from an economics perspective, I know some of you already jumped 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of me and they're playing this all out in your head. I get it. Rewind it. Let's just make it simple, boil it down. If you have to work every day for the rest of your life, or if you didn't have to work every day for the rest of your life, which one would you choose? If you had to work every day for the rest of your life, or never again, what would you choose? Obviously, you're going to pick never again. Now, the problem for those 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead who already know this, if everything is free and no one has to work, then nothing gets made. Okay, well, it looks like all free doesn't work. And the only real option is we gotta have nothing be free. Everyone works, you gotta pay for everything, and that leads to goods being on the shelf. If no one works, nothing gets made. But if people work, things are made, good things are made, and things just get better and better every day. The problem with no free, which it works, and that's probably where we would want to go, but not everybody can work. No solutions, only trade-offs. No work would be great, but we don't have stuff. All work is great, but some people can't work. What do we do in that case? Well, what we realize is that we can't have all free, we can't have no free. Those are too extreme. The answer is going to be somewhere in between. And ultimately, we settle on the idea that, okay, we have to provide some free stuff. We have to have some subsidies for those that are in need. And while we're at it, we might as well provide some subsidies for businesses too to boost the economy. First and foremost, those in need are the first focus of subsidies or free stuff. And then maybe we'll help businesses and other groups as well, since we are doing things, we are meddling. And who is the we that is meddling? Who is the we that is intervening? Who's going to make the choice of who gets the free stuff? The subsidies, of course, it's going to be the government. There's just no other institution or organization that can really make this decision. And at the very least, we elect the government. We pick the people who are going to make this choice. And if they don't make a good choice with the free stuff or the subsidy, then we pick new people. And really, that's what happens every 4 years. When people argue and fight over the government, there are a lot of issues at hand. Ideological views, wars. But one of the big reasons for changing the government or putting in a new government or keeping the same government is, how do they make a decision based on the free stuff? Who are they subsidizing? Who are they not subsidizing? If you like the way that they are dealing with this situation of who gets free things, then you keep voting for them or you pick new people. And ultimately, they're playing a big game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo. They are picking the winners and the losers. So when you are electing your political officials and you're voting, your eeny, meeny, miny, mo is to pick the right person to play the eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And hopefully you're a little bit more selective than eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Hopefully they are as well. But ultimately, that's what is the government's situation here when they have to decide who gets the subsidies, who gets the benefits, who gets the free stuff. Who are the winners? They will receive benefits. The losers do not receive benefits. Also, the losers are going to pay the taxes. Is it not fair? Of course, it's not perfect. We can't all have free stuff. If we all had free stuff, then no one would work. And if no one works, we wouldn't make anything. Someone's got to pay. There has to be a cost. There are trade-offs. If we want to help those in need, we got to pay. Free school lunch, an example of a benefit. Help kids out, also indirectly help farmers, because ultimately the kid who receives money to buy food, the kid's buying that food from the farmer. Taxpayer does not get free meal, and the taxpayer is paying the taxes to support the program. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Someone paid for that free lunch. Healthcare, Medicare, and Medicaid. Elderly, low-income families. Free healthcare, free hospital. Someone's got to pay. Taxpayers are going to pay for the program. Taxpayers are also going to pay for their own health insurance on top of that. Section 8 housing, as we talked about in class. Free housing for low-income families. Nothing's free. Taxpayers are paying for that. Taxpayers are also paying their own mortgage. Well, that's not fair. Well, let's just play this out in our head. We talked about this in class. If you do not fund this program and you make kids live on the street, if that child is able to survive till they're 18 and not turn to a life of crime and not end up in jail or not end up in a grave, what type of child will that be in 18 years? You have a choice, and there's going to be trade-offs. You can pay your taxes and house that child for 18 years and hope that they develop well, or you can keep your money. I'm not paying that. We're not funding this program. We're not subsidizing this. That child grows up on the street, turns to a life of crime in 18 years. Now think of a generation of those children. What would society look like? You can pay now, or you can pay later. That harvester, as we talked about in class, how many farmers have enough money sitting in their pocket, in their bank account to pay for that? They don't. And if they can't purchase that, then they can have the most advanced, up-to-date equipment. And if they don't have the most advanced, up-to-date equipment, they're not farming as efficiently and effectively as possible. They're not producing as much food as possible. And obviously that's feeding less people. So our government subsidizes farmers. Gives out a little bit of free stuff, sometimes through loans and tax breaks. Help farmers produce at their best. And that production then benefits the entire country. That is the goal with subsidies. It's not necessarily just to benefit its individual. It's how could this subsidy or free stuff ultimately benefit society as a whole. Head Start, very similar to Section 8, will help children develop so that in the future, children are productive citizens. If we don't give them preschool at a young age, they may not develop correctly, and we could have a generation of children that are not very productive. Social Security, there you go. Talking free stuff. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Picking winners. Picking losers. One of the problems with this program is that sometimes it goes off the rails. All the time it goes off the rails. If the Democrats are in control, they tend to fund programs that favor the Democrats. It's not a simple system of we're going to subsidize specifically the programs that are the most necessary and beneficial to society. If it were, we would have a lot less political strife. But unfortunately, these subsidies, these free stuff, these handouts, if Dems are in control, they tend to favor Dem programs. Programs that align with the Dem ideology, not the Republicans, whereas then at the same time, the Republicans are paying for it. Now, tables turn, and we often see when the Republicans are in control, they will subsidize or give free stuff to programs that favor Republican ideology, just the way that it works. I'm going to give a real life example. Elon Musk, when he was a Democrat, received generous funding, subsidies from the government to launch Tesla and his battery factories. And it worked, and it was great, it was awesome. It's a good subsidy to help create jobs, to advance technology. Then when he leaves the Democrats and he launches his next company of Starlink, which could provide internet to the entire nation, to rural South for a very low amount of money, The government then turns their back on him and says, because the government is Democratic at the time, they ignore him and decide, nope, we're going to fund our program through our buddies. We're going to lay fiber optic cable throughout the South by digging everything up. Musk says, hey, I'm cheaper, I'm easier. Why don't you just use Starlink to give internet to these people? Didn't happen because that's not the point. The thing gets off the rails and we go from a system that already is kind of shaky, giving out free things, allowing the government to decide who gets the free things, and then it turns into a political power struggle where the power to give out free things is used to increase your power. Dems do it, Republicans do it. Again, it goes back to the very beginning of the lesson where I talked about how the biggest problem with taxpayers is subsidies. We'll talk about wars and political divides and our political views, and people often fight about believing in this cause or that cause. But one of the biggest sources of political strife in our country is this idea of subsidies. Who gets the handouts? Who gets the free stuff? What individuals, businesses, or institutions will be subsidized? And how do we decide? Are we truly deciding to subsidize based on needs, growth, making our society better? Or is the government giving out subsidies and handouts to increase their power? Are they making poor choices with our tax money? Are they making poor choices with the money that they're borrowing that you have to pay back? That is a problem. There's no such thing as a free lunch. These subsidies, this free stuff, it all comes at a cost. And later on in future lessons, we'll look at this from a deeper perspective. We'll really dig deep and we'll think about how the idea of subsidizing free stuff, how it can affect an individual, and then groups of individuals and generations of individuals, and how that could have ramifications, how that can have consequences, how we could subsidize a behavior and then get that behavior over and over and over, and what that would look like in America. And then also we'll talk about when we receive free stuff, how we behave differently. And when we behave differently and a group of people behave differently and a generation behaves differently, what are going to be the ramifications of that? We're going to go much deeper than just here's the free stuff, here's who paid for it. But hey, we're not done yet. Let's wrap up real quick with our little favorite. We talked about mainly how these social causes were receiving these benefits. But as we said earlier, businesses also, like Elon Musk, receive money to grow his business. He's a pretty rich dude. Why is he getting tax breaks? Why is he getting money from the government? Well, this guy also, his company, Amazon, is receiving some of the most of the subsidies in this nation. You say, wait, why are they being given? Well, we want to help Amazon out, and Amazon creates jobs, is the argument for the government. Amazon gets tax breaks to locate in certain areas. Why don't they just pay for it? Well, again, government subsidies create most of the divide in this nation.